Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Outgrowing QuickBooks: Why Your Business Should Make the Move to Microsoft Dynamics GP. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us. My name is Carrie Robbins, and I am a Business Development Coordinator located in our Columbus, Ohio office. Our presenter today will be Tammy Johnson, a Solutions Architect located in our California office. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. Tammy will be answering questions throughout the presentation. Also, feel free to email myself or Tammy directly, and we will be happy to get back to you. Before we jump into the ERP solution, I'd like to take a moment to provide you with some background on Socius and how we work with organizations like yours to accelerate their growth and profitability. An ERP implementation is only as good as the team you put behind it. That's why selecting the right partner is just as critical to a successful ERP implementation as the software solution that you choose. We believe that our background and experience at Socius demonstrate that we are the kind of partner that delivers successful implementation projects and ongoing services that support the growth of your company. Socius is the Latin word for partner or ally, which is the kind of relationship that we try to have with the almost 2,000 organizations we have implemented business management solutions for over the last 30 years. While implementation projects are a big part of what we do, the true measure of our partnership is demonstrated in a wide array of ongoing services that we provide to our clients. This level of service has earned Socius a highly respected reputation in the industry. We have consistently been recognized as a top partner by software industry experts, winning numerous awards both from Microsoft and from independent publications. We've been named to the Microsoft Inner Circle 18 of a possible 21 times, which means we are in the top 1% of all Dynamics partners in the world, and we were selected as one of only 3 Microsoft Dynamic Master VARs in the U.S., meaning our processes and methodologies are recognized as best practices by Microsoft. Regardless of where you are in your selection process, we encourage you to weigh your software partner decision just as heavily as your software solution decision. Socius has 95 professionals located in multiple offices. Headquartered in Dublin, Ohio, we proudly serve clients across the United States from our growing number of locations. This slide represents a visual to the Socius methodology recognized by Microsoft. This is how we lay out the plan for the different pieces and parts, building the solution together, deploying it out to the enterprise for everyone to use, and going live and forward into the future to make sure it is a successful implementation. Our defined methodologies allow us to support our 4 key solution offerings. Those are comprised of CRM, ERP, BI, and SharePoint solutions. While each of these solutions are powerful standing alone, a true business solution is achieved when these aspects of your business are integrated. Hopefully that provided a brief introduction of who Socius is and what we do. I'd now like to transition the presentation over to Tammy Johnson.
Great, thanks Carrie. Well, good morning from Northern California. We're going to be talking today about QuickBooks and some of the challenges and workarounds that you might be experiencing today that are just part of QuickBooks and how those can be improved, made better, actually go away when you transition to Microsoft Dynamics GP. I have a few slides I want to go through just to kind of lay the foundation, and then we're going to jump right into Dynamics GP and talk about the functionality as well as erasing some of those issues that you have. Definitely submit your questions. I will be pausing periodically. Carrie will be gathering those questions, and we'll kind of answer them as we go. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is a workaround, and if you're using QuickBooks, you know this word very well. QuickBooks is very good at what it's for, and that is to start you off and carry your business through kind of the beginning growth. There are definitely points at which it's time to move on, and when you start experiencing more and more workarounds, which is defined as a method for overcoming a problem or limitation in a program or system, and I think this graphic represents it pretty well. You know, there's a crack in the egg. We put a Band-Aid on it, but the crack's still there. The problem's still there. And when you start having to use more and more Band-Aids in your processes, that's when it's time to start looking for a different, bigger, more scalable solution. So I think the real foundational issue that we see with QuickBooks is the database. And as I said, it's great for when you're starting out, but as you start growing and you start experiencing significant growth, you're going to see issues with the way that the database handles the data. You know, the QuickBooks database is proprietary. That means that applications other than being developed, QuickBooks-focused application being developed using this database. It's not really a relational database, so the tables don't really know how they're supposed to interact with each other. It's slow. When you get to a certain point, it can be really slow. There are record limits. I think you have a limit of 14,500 master records. So that might be customers, vendors, if you're tracking any sort of inventory, employees, all of those are considered master records. The total of all of those can't be more than 14,500. So we've definitely seen issues with clients hitting those limits and literally stopping in their tracks. There's also user limits. So there's a limit to the number of users you can have in a specific company, for example. And if we kind of take this down a path and identify what's happening, we really look at what's happening here. If we have a slow database, we have a slow application. We have lost productivity. We have to throw more bodies at the problem. You know, more people. Information comes in really, really slow. It's not real time. We can't make good decisions because we don't have real good current information. That equals lost revenue. So here's a real-life example of a client that we recently took off of QuickBooks onto Dynamics GP. And when I was talking with them about some of the issues that they were having with QuickBooks, this one really jumped out at me. When they wanted to do a checkbook inquiry in QuickBooks, it took 5 minutes for that to come up on the screen. And there's a really good example of a client that's kind of taken it as far as they can, that QuickBooks is not helping them today. It's way past time to move on and start looking at something else. And so we did move that client successfully to Dynamics GP. So let's talk about, with regard to the database and some of the issues with performance and record limits, what QuickBooks users will do. One thing that we see is they start a new company when the performance becomes unbearable, and actually this company had done that 2 or 3 times. So it was way, way past time for them to make a move. When record limits are reached, you start a new company as well. If you have a new company, you have no history in that company. You can't be agile as a business. You can't look at information, real-time, spot trends. Again, you can't make good decisions, and again, that's going to result in lost revenue. You know, anytime your systems are failing, you're losing revenue. Another workaround that we've seen to bypass the user limitations is to do separate installations of QuickBooks by function, and then do manual consolidations. Again, you know, lost productivity here. But here's an example. Workstation 1 is doing accounts payable. They're posting into a general ledger. And then at the end of the month, they print that general ledger and they hand it to whoever does the real general ledger. And the same for accounts receivable, and then whatever else you're doing as well. Now, I said general ledger there. In Workstation 3, that might be Excel. It might be another QuickBooks general ledger, but the bottom line is we're not seeing a fully integrated system because of the foundation level limitations that are built into QuickBooks. So let's talk about Dynamics GP. It's built on Microsoft SQL Server. So that means it's relational. The tables know how to talk to each other. They know how they relate to one another. They speak the same language. It's scalable, and I actually have a slide here that talks about scalability. It grows as you grow, and it's fast. So, and it's not proprietary. So you'll see applications that really span multiple industries, multiple solutions, not just ERP applications. You might see operational applications, websites. Lots of different types of organizations use Microsoft SQL Server as their foundational database to hold their data. And that's really the core of any application, is the database. That way you're not limited by the constraints of the database. And just to kind of give you a, I don't know where my graphic went there, there it is, give you an idea of how that might kind of flow through that same path that we've been talking about. If we have a fast database, we have a fast application. We're getting timely information. We're agile. We can make better decisions based on the information that we are being given. We can quickly change things up if we need to. You know, I don't know, focus less on a particular product line or bring on a new product line, or you know, have initiatives for collections, for example, for collecting receivables. If that information is current, we're going to increase our revenue. We don't have to add extra people, machine, and happening, and we can use that information to make good decisions. Here's an example of some scalability results, so some benchmark results that Microsoft has done on Dynamics GP. And there's a lot of information here about transactions. What I really want to point out to you is the bottom right, where it's talking that the 8-hour business day throughput. So this is for 500 concurrent users. This benchmark test was done with 500 concurrent users. And you can see the totals, the 8-hour business day throughput, 9.8 million lines of data processed in 8 hours with those 500 users. That's a lot of data. That's just an 8-hour day. So that's just an example of the scalability. So it grows from, obviously if you're coming off of QuickBooks, you don't have 9.8 million lines of transactions that you're running. But you could scale past that just because of the power of the Microsoft SQL Server database. With regard to the GP users, there aren't any limits to the number of users or the number of companies that you can have in GP. And your user type depends on your license. So if you have an on-premise implementation of Dynamics GP, you'll have concurrent licensing. That means that you might have 10 user licenses, but you might have 100 logins for Dynamics GP. In a concurrent 10-user scenario, only 10 of those users could access and be processing data inside of Dynamics GP at any given time. If you're using an online or a cloud software as a service type scenario, then those are all, and this is true, kind of industry-wide, those are named users. So each user would have a particular login that they would use, and you can't, and if you needed to add a new user, you'd have to get a new user license for that user. And here's an example. This is actually the company that I'm going to be showing you here in just a few minutes. Fabricam Inc. You can see here that I have 6 users. Is that right? 6 users, 10 companies. This is the first level of security in Dynamics GP is defining user access to a specific company. And then there's role, task, and operational security beyond that. But if a user doesn't have access to a company, they don't even see it when they log in. It's not even an option. They don't even know it's there. In my example here, Phyllis has access to all of my companies. So because of the limitations of the QuickBooks database, reporting can be a challenge. Again, you're using a proprietary reporting tool. It's a limited tool set, and it's mostly manual. And if we look at the workarounds, that the most common workaround in QuickBooks is using Excel to restate the data and then generate reports. And any of you who are doing that today in Excel know this error. Invalid reference. Typically what we see is the accounting team will take the data from QuickBooks, they'll take that trial balance and they'll dump it out into Excel, and then they'll use linked spreadsheets to create their, especially financial reports. We see it with other reports as well, but we'll see it connecting those spreadsheets together. If one person changes a line, if something gets moved, if there's an error in a linked spreadsheet, this is what you're going to get, but you probably already know that. So hopefully what you're going to see today is how this whole linking spreadsheets scenario goes away when you move to an application like Microsoft Dynamics GP. All right, so with that, I am going to move right into the application. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of give you an overview, and then I want to pick up with reporting because there's a lot to cover in the area of reporting. And then we're going to look at things like general ledger accounts. We'll talk about some inventory functions. We'll look at purchasing and replenishment, and then we'll look at processing sales. Because of the time that we have today, I can't go into every functional area of Dynamics GP, but you can see them listed here. So in addition to the general ledger, which would be the financial area, there's sales and purchasing and inventory, which we're going to talk about today. There's also HR and payroll. So and that is included in Dynamics GP. There's project accounting, so if you're a professional services organization, or someone who bills time, materials, and expenses to projects, Dynamics GP can house those processes for you. As well, manufacturing. So if you're manufacturing either make to order or make to stock type manufacturing, Dynamics GP does that very well, including tracking of WIP and collecting labor for your manufacturing process. And there's also a field service component that allows you to generate service calls for field service techs, as well as depot management to be able to bring product in, repair it, and send it back out to your customer. Again, we're going to be focusing on the top few buttons that you see here. All right, so this, incidentally, is my navigation pane, and you see it's a lot like Outlook. If I want to, I'll be accessing most of what we do today here through my home page, through these panes that you see on my home page, but you could also just click on a functional area, and it will take you in to all of the functions that you have access to for that area. So keep in mind, I'm the system administrator. I have everything. But users would only see what they have security rights to see in each of these, we call them area pages. All right. So let's go back to our home page. And you can see that I've got this laid out. I mentioned the different panes of information. I've got To Do and Business Analyzer and My Reports and Quick Links. I can move these around if I want to. So if I wanted Business Analyzer to be over here, I could move it there. I can move To Do over here if I wanted to. If I want to, and I can move them back if I want. I don't need to have them appear the way that they do there. They can be 3 wide. You saw when we went into this financial area page how one piece was bigger. That's just by choosing the maximize mode. And you can see in my setup, in my personalization of this home page, I said when I take an area to the maximum size on the screen, push everything to the right. So you can see here it's pushed all of my other functions to the right. They're still active, they're just smaller and on the right. And so you can have them on the top or the bottom or the left, however you want to do it. So I'm going to put this back where it was because I like everything to be really even. And so what we're going to do now is kind of move into this reporting discussion and continue on with reporting. You know, what we were talking about in QuickBooks reporting is that it tends to be manual. There are reports that you can generate, but you tend to take those, change them up, and put them in Excel. Obviously, that can be error-prone. Anytime you're retyping something, we're humans. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have errors. And so hopefully you'll see that the way that things are done in Dynamics GP, you don't have to retype anything. So I'm going to start off here in my Business Analyzer. Now, this is a series of metrics and key performance indicators, and there are roughly 200 that come out of the box. Obviously, I don't have all 200 here. And this allows you to kind of get that high-level information that you're looking for. This is great for executives. This can be accessed outside of GP as well. So in my world, when the debits and credits are happening the way they're supposed to, orders are going out, payables are being paid, purchase orders are being processed, you know, everything's going fine. What I care about are the exceptions. And if I know what those exceptions are in my organization, I can tell GP to let me know when there are exceptions. So one way to do that is using these charts, metrics, and key performance indicators. And I can see pretty clearly here I have a huge issue with my cash position. And so if I want to find out more about that, I can choose to view the report. And I'm going to just hide my parameters here because I don't need them, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it better in the GoToMeeting. So this is a key performance indicator here. Obviously, I'm not performing very well in the area of my cash. I'm way down versus last period, and so I'm going to just click on that. Now, when I'm talking about show me the exceptions, here's a really good example. I can see very clearly that I am tanking here in April, which is, I live in April of 2017, so I can see that there's been a big dip in my cash. Here I'm going along, and then suddenly, boom, there's a big dip. So I want to find out more about that. So I'm just going to click on this. And because my cash position is made up of my cash accounts, that's what it's showing me here. And I can expand these if I want to and find out more. And I'm just going to scroll down here, and what I'm looking for a big credit. That's what I want here. Oh, there's one. I can see there's 126, 265, 67. That's a big credit. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see flashing down here at the bottom of my screen is my journal entry inquiry. I'm in Dynamics GP now, bringing up that journal entry window so I can investigate exactly what this particular transaction is. And I can see pretty clearly, just based on what's on my screen here, that this is computer check. And I can drill in, just follow the links here. I can see that it's for that 126, 265, 67. I issued it to International Telecom. I can look at how I applied this, what invoices I paid. I can look at how this was distributed, how this went into my general ledger. And let me just pause for a second and talk about general ledger accounts. First of all, this distribution, it's kind of a boring example of a distribution because it's exactly what you would expect for a check. We're going to debit payables and credit cash. But I want to talk about the structure of my GL accounts. Now, I know in QuickBooks it's flat. It's one flat field, and I think you can add a classification to that. So it can go to 2 levels. In my example here, and this is only an example, I have a segmented chart of accounts, and that means I can pull out any segment, and I can even wildcard and pull out any piece of a segment. In my example here, I have a 9-character account. It's 3 segments. The first segment in my example is department, the second is account, and the third is location. So, and you can have up to 66 characters and up to 10 segments. So there's a lot of flexibility in creating your chart of accounts, and just keeping in mind that once you create your chart of accounts, you can pull out those segments and analyze them independently. So if I wanted to get a departmental income statement, something like that, it's really, really easy to do, and we'll look at financial reporting here in just a minute. So that's the Business Analyzer. And again, this is built on the reporting tool that's a part of Microsoft SQL Server. It's called SQL Reporting Services. It is not a proprietary tool. There are lots and lots and lots of applications that use SQL Server Reporting Services as their reporting engine. And it's really easy to find folks who know that because it's a Microsoft technology. So I'm going to pause here. Carrie, do we have any questions?
We don't yet.
Okay, then I'll just keep going. I can just keep going indefinitely. So, but I will pause periodically. So if you have questions, definitely submit them. All right. So I'm going to move to the left here into this to-do area, and you can see I've got some information here again. Back to those exceptions. Tell me what needs to be done. Well, what needs to be done here is I've got a recurring general ledger batch that I need to post. I've got 118 overstocked items. I've said when my order point quantity is less than my quantity on hand, that equals an overstock. And so it's telling me here that I have 118 of those. I also have 28 payables that are due today. Again, tell me what I need to do. Don't tell me what's going fine. Tell me what I need to pay attention to. So I'm just going to click on this. Now, all of these, if I click on any of these, they're going to take me to the same place. And what we've done here is we've clicked on that payables due today reminder and opened up what's called Smart List. This is a query tool that allows users to perform queries on the data inside of Dynamics GP. You don't have to know scripting language, SQL scripting language, programming language in order to do this. If you did, I couldn't do it. And I know how to do this. So you do a search, and you're just picking fields and values. I want to see all of the invoices that have money still owing on them that are due through today, which for me is 4/12/2017. I can pick the columns of information that I want, and notice here I've changed the display name of the document number to the invoice number, so I can translate into my language. And then I can add additional columns if I want to as well. Keep in mind that this is just for payables transactions. You can see this extends throughout the entire system. So this is just one little piece. I just want to scroll through here so that you can get an idea. You're not limited to 5 or 6 fields. you can, there's hundreds and hundreds of fields in each area that you can choose to query and report on. So this is great for research as well, because if you're looking for a particular number, you could say, I want to see all of the invoices between $120 and $125, and it'll give you a result. And then once you see your list, you can say, well, gee, this is the one I want to look at. And drill back in, look at the details, see if you'd paid it. It wouldn't be on an open list if you'd paid it, but you could look at how it was applied. Again, we can look at the distributions here for this particular invoice. So I can get back to the details. I can also see a little more here. So maybe I want to know all of the invoices that we've ever generated for this vendor. I can get access to that information real easily, again with the ability to drill back into the details. From here, if I've got the information I want, I can save it as a favorite, and part of saving these as a favorite is the option to add it as a reminder, and you can add it later if you want to as well. So you can, the idea here is you can save it and it'll show up in your favorites list, or it can be ad hoc. So you can just say, you know, I'm done. I'm not going to use this again. I found that number between $120 and $125. I'm done with my research. Now, if you want to share this and work with this a little more, you can print it out. What we see most of our clients do is pushing that Excel button and dropping this out into Excel. And from here, again, you don't have to rekey anything. It's already dropped out here in Excel. Numbers are numbers, dates are dates, text is text. I don't have to parse anything. It's here, and I can do whatever I want with it from this point on. Keep in mind that if I'm exporting from Excel, that's static data. If I want updated information, I need to go in and do my query and export that again. But there are ways in Dynamics GP that you can have refreshable reports accessed from outside of GP in Excel. So an example that's pretty common is if you have salespeople and you want them to be able to have an updated receivables list, but you don't want them to have access to the detail. You don't want them logging into the system. Here's a perfect example. This is a refreshable report. And this is for my salesperson, Paul. And every time he opens this up or comes in and refreshes it, because you can refresh it, it's going to provide him with up-to-date, right-now information. If Aaron Fitz makes a payment on this 90-day balance, the next time he opens it or refreshes it, that's going to be reflected. So this is a really good way to provide information externally to people who are not GP users to allow them to be able to see what's going on, but they're not processing transactions. And you don't have to print them a report and put it in their inbox every day. And by the time they take it out of their inbox, it's out of date. This is current, up to date right now. So another example that I have here of using Excel live, hooking into Dynamics GP is with a dashboard. Again, this is an example. And you can see some of those metrics and key performance indicators that we saw through Business Analyzer here now stated inside of Excel. And I've got some date filtering that I can do. And you'll see as I click on the different quarters, the results are changing. So here's all of 2010, here's 2010, 2011, and then on to 2012. So keep in mind, Excel not just as a flat collector of data, it's actually a reporter of data linking live into that SQL Server database and providing information back to those individuals that need to consume the information. So there are some examples of reports within Dynamics GP using Excel. So we've seen SQL Server reporting services through Business Analyzer, and now we've seen just using, just straight Excel as a way to do reporting as well. So also in my to-do area here, I've got some tasks, and these tasks can be connected to GP windows or not. Oftentimes we see the accounting and finance team is responsible for IT as well, and so maybe they're responsible for facilitating a backup every night of the systems, and so you can add this as a task, reminding you every day that you need to set up your nightly backup. And you can make it recurring so it happens every day. And then when you're done, you mark it complete. You could assign it to someone else too. So if you're not going to be here tonight, you're leaving early, and you want Melissa to do the backup, you can go ahead and save that. It'll move off of my task list and move on to Melissa's task list. As well, I can link into other areas. So here I'm linking to a GP window for my task, but it might be a web page or an Excel file or an external application. In this case, it's my bank rec. And I'm doing this weekly. So this is a weekly occurrence. And I'm just going to go ahead and click into the window here. So it's taking me right to the window where I need to complete this task. And I'm going to click Transactions. And it's asking me if I want to match deposits by the 8-day grace period, because I'm using electronic reconcile. So what I've done is I've mapped from my bank. It's a one-time process where you map from your bank into bank rec in Dynamics GP. And then when you want to do your bank rec, you pull that file in to mark your transactions as cleared. We have clients that reconcile it using this method every day. Just takes a minute. Whereas it's not this big, huge production that you're doing in Excel at the end of the month. It's very simple and very fast if you're using electronic reconcile. And it's actually fast if you're doing it in just checking boxes as well, because you can follow your bank statement and mark ranges. You can also record adjustments through that electronic reconcile process. You map specific transaction codes to specific accounts in Dynamics GP. And when you're done and it's 0, you push the reconcile button and move on to the next month. All right, I'm going to start. Actually, there's one more thing I want to talk about before I pause for questions again. I want to talk about financial reports. And I know this is a big issue in QuickBooks because typically we're taking that information and we're sending it out to Excel in some form, and we're redoing our financial statements in Excel. With Dynamics GP, you do not have to do that. Dynamics GP uses Management Reporter, which is the financial reporting tool for all of the Microsoft Dynamics ERP solutions. And what it does is it links right into your general ledger and pulls the actual information that the transactions that you've posted. You have complete control over the structure of this report, of any reports. This is only an example. This is a basic, income statement type report that I've created. But you can include budgets, so you can have as many budgets as you want in Dynamics GP. You can pull that, compare to actual. Cash flow, balance sheet, here's income statement, any sort of trend reports. We'll actually look at a trend report here in just a second as well. But here I've got actual and year-to-date actual, and then my budget and a variance. And what I can do is, in this example, I've got this on a website or even on someone's desktop. They can just open the link and view the report. Once you publish it, open the link, view the report. Here's the information that is important to this particular individual. I'm accessing this outside of Dynamics GP. I am not a Dynamics GP user. So if I want to know more about a particular line, let's say I'm in a specific department and I'm restricted to seeing only certain pieces of my reporting, maybe I want to look at this advertising expense. And I can drill in and I can look at all of the accounts that are rolling into advertising expense. Now, you're not limited to which accounts can roll in. Mine are all advertising accounts. But if you wanted to have, I don't know, direct advertising or direct marketing, advertising, etc., all roll into the top level called advertising. You could do that as well. You decide what's on each of those lines. And then from here, maybe I want to know a little bit more about this, so I just click into that. Now there's a couple of things happening here. The first one is I can see the details. I can see that on the 12th, I had an invoice for $123.45 posted to advertising expense. I can see the vendor, and I can see the invoice number. I'm not logged into Dynamics GP. So this could save you some time when you are publishing your financial reports. I know that you're probably on the phone or taking emails with questions about those financial reports. This, I'm not going to say it takes it away, but it's going to eliminate some of those calls and some of that communication just because users have everything they need right here, or most of what they need. I can also add comments to this. So I can see here there's really no description for this transaction, and I know because I know those individuals who are consuming this information, I know someone's going to ask me, well, what was that for? I can come over here and add a comment, and you can see I've added a comment here just by clicking the plus. It's the subscription of the business magazine for the lobby. And so now the person who's reviewing this can look at those comments, and I can hide those if I want to as well, if I don't want them on the screen. But there's still an indicator here that there has been a comment associated with this. So moving back here, we'll go back to our main screen here. I want to talk about this trend analysis report. Just another example of a report. Keep in mind, notice here I'm using the same rows of information, and now I've applied different columns. So it's the same report, I'm just putting different building blocks on that report. Here you can see in sales, I'm going to click on sales here, and I can see sales are trending up, and someone responded, yep, that's great, so you can get some collaboration going here. You'll also see there's a chart here. And so if I click on salary expense, it says salary expense is in line with the increase in sales. And if I click on that chart, I can bring it out full screen, and I can actually visually see that trend happening from 2004 to 2017. So just some examples of out of the box, I didn't have to rekey anything. You know, I added a couple comments and a chart to a financial report. I pushed a button to generate the report. No more restating everything in Excel. Now, I will mention, you can do that if you want. You can actually download any of these reports into Excel if you want to, but you don't have to anymore. And of course, there's that increased productivity, you know, increased quality of the actual document because we have less opportunity for errors. All right, I'm going to pause now. Do we have any questions, Carrie?
No questions right now.
Okay, good. We have a lot to cover in 15 minutes. So I'm going to keep going. So we talked about our general ledger accounts and the structure of our posting accounts. And so I've just got a view here of 5 of my posting accounts. There are a couple other types of accounts in Dynamics GP that I want to mention. The first is a fixed allocation account. And this is pretty common that we find in ERP and back office accounting solutions is the ability to break out transactions based on a percentage. So when I post to utilities expense, it's going to break these out to these accounts, which in my example is utilities by department, based on the percentages that I've indicated here. Pretty standard. Dynamics GP takes that out a step further by giving us the ability to create those allocations based on non-financial information. So in the fixed allocation scenario, it's just a percentage. In the variable allocation, and so here it's rent expense, and again it's rent expense by department, and as I click down on these, you'll see my breakdown account change. That breakdown account contains the square footage for each department. And so I can take that square footage and allocate by square footage by department. I've seen this used, number of production hours, breakout utilities or facilities costs based on that. I've seen it in a healthcare scenario where number of patient days or patient visits or things like that, breaking out revenue per patient, getting down to that point. You can also use these. You don't have to use these for allocation purposes. You can use these breakdown accounts as a way to create a calculation in your financial reports as well. So you don't have to use them for allocation. So it's a really good way to keep that information and be consistent in the way that you're reporting. All right, so one area that I think it's important that we focus on here is inventory, because Dynamics GP has real inventory. So I am going to, there's no need to use Fishbowl or another inventory add-on in order to manage your inventory. It's right here in Dynamics GP. Multiple valuation methods, FIFO, LIFO, average cost, standard cost, depending on your practices in the industry, and that's by item. Inventory items can be actually items that we stock, or they can even be services, flat fee items, that sort of thing as well, things that we don't stock necessarily, but we want to invoice for. I can have different unit of measure schedules so that I can sell and purchase in those different units of measure. So here I can, an each or a case. And again, I can sell or purchase in either of those. Keep in mind that Dynamics GP allows us to have serial and lot tracked inventory as well. I want to focus for a second here on the inventory quantities area. And notice when I start typing a couple letters here, it makes recommendations for me. So finding information is really easy, or you can do a lookup and do all kinds of filters within that. But what we're looking at here is my main warehouse site. And I can have as many locations as I want associated with an inventory item. And those can be physical locations, or they can be broken out in your warehouse, in a physical warehouse as well. Notice I have a primary vendor associated with this inventory site. And I can see by site or as a whole here. If I click all, it's going to show me everything, where all of the information sits for this particular item. What I have on hand, what's allocated maybe to production or to sales orders or in-transit inventory transfers, that sort of thing. I can come down here in the planning area, and notice that I've got some order points here defined for this, and I'm saying use the PO generator for replenishment. And what that means is it's going to be looking at how information is flowing through my, my inventory item, what I'm purchasing, what I'm selling, and when I come in and run this PO generator process, it's going to tell me what I should be purchasing. So based on those order points and the status of my inventory right now for this warehouse, I should purchase 87 of these white phone cords. And it made a recommendation of a vendor as well. So that's the vendor that was associated with this particular location. I can change that if I want. Notice here on this cordless phone, there's a big red X. That's because there's no vendor defined. And so if I define the vendor here, if I choose a vendor, then I can go ahead and generate the purchase order for that phone as well. We're just going to generate our purchase order for this white phone cord, and I'll take you briefly through the purchasing process. And so it goes through the process of generating the purchase order, and it's going to give me a report here telling me that it was generated. And if I drop this out to the screen, you can see it left my list behind there, and it's PO 2110. And so I'm just going to go into purchase orders here, and we'll bring up that PO. So this is the one that we just created, PO 2110 for 87 of these. Notice it says new. I can go ahead and release this if I want to. Notice that I can send the document in email if my system and vendor are configured for that. So I could do this in bulk too. So I could say all of my POs that are ready to be released, email them out to the vendor. So I'm going to just choose to print this, and we're going to put it on the screen. So this is an example of a purchase order. And we're going to look at, when we look at sales, we'll look at another way to do this. All of the forms and reports that you see in Dynamics GP are changeable, modifiable, configurable. You can add logos. Again, you can email these out. You can generate them through Excel if you choose to, and through Word. And I'm going to show you how to do that here when we look at a sales order. The purchase orders are the same. So now, if I look at my purchase order, it's been released. So it's been sent in some way to my vendor. Dynamics GP uses gap accounting, a three-way match. So when this inventory is received by my warehouse, I would go through the receiving process. It will track variances as well. When accounting receives the invoice, they actually match that to what was received. So you've got a way to track the variances. You can see, and that goes back to vendor performance as well. So you've got that true three-way match. You can do them at the same time if you want to, but I think for internal control purposes, that three-way match is a really good way to handle that. All right. So after I purchase something, then I can go ahead and sell it. So I'm just going to bring up an example of a sales order here. We'll just pick the first one on the list. And so this is where I'm going through my fulfillment process. Maybe this order came in from my website. I've integrated with my website or another application. Maybe my order entry folks are in this form entering the sales orders in. Notice we can have different ship-to addresses for our vendors. We can override it for just one order if we want to. We can require, these red fields are required. We can make the purchase order customer PO number required so that a customer has to give us a PO in order for us to be able to process their order. Depends on your policy. Notice I've got this set up here for kind of heads down data entry. So I'm typing in my items or doing lookups and finding those items that I'm selling. I could copy from a previous order for a customer if I want to. If they call and say, I want to buy what I bought last time, you could go ahead and copy their last order. I can also see this not just from this single line view, but there's a whole lot more behind this. So I could do my data entry in this way as well. If I'm overriding maybe different ship-to addresses by line item for a customer, I can go ahead and override that. Pricing is going to come through based on the price I've defined for that customer on the inventory item, so that will default through automatically. The process for a sales order is to go ahead and do your documents. Now keep in mind, I'm doing them one at a time. I can do them in bulk here as well. I'm just doing it for this one order. But I could send an order confirmation. I could do picking and packing slips here. I'm just going to show you what an order would look like, a confirmation. And this one's actually going to be generated out to Word. Again, I'm doing these one at a time. I could do it in bulk if that's what my process dictates. And then once that's been done, and you can see what this looks like. So it looks a little bit different than what the purchase order looked like. But this is actually in Microsoft Word. So Microsoft playing nice with Microsoft. So once this is done, I could transfer this then to an invoice. Make any changes that I need to make and transfer it to an invoice. This can start with a quote as well. So you could generate a quote, move the quote to an order, do any back orders, and then transfer it to invoice. Notice this purchase option that we have here. This is, if I need to back order something, I can actually generate a purchase right from the sales transaction and link the sales transaction. This is also good for drop ships. If you have if your model is to drop ship most of your sales orders directly from your vendor to your customer, you can actually generate the purchase order from the sales order and keep them linked together, and then follow through that process of invoicing your purchase order, including serial numbers. Those serial numbers, if you're using them, would move to the associated sales order, and then you could invoice the sales order. So a full fulfillment process that happens right here in Dynamics GP. So with that, I'm going to come back up here and talk one more time about workarounds. And hopefully you've seen in using Dynamics GP how those workarounds would go away. They're not necessary anymore because GP just handles them as a part of what you see today as workarounds as just part of the process of managing data through the system. So with that, I'm going to stop one more time and ask for questions.
Nope, no questions.
All right. Then I'm going to hand it back over to you, Carrie, and let you talk about next steps.
Thanks, Tammy. We've listed a few steps if you're interested in learning more about today's subject. Microsoft currently has 3 great promotions running for new ERP customers, including a starter pack offer for $3,000, 50% off the extended pack, and up to 20% off of additional users. We'd also like to direct you to our complimentary business strategy assessment, where our consultants discuss your existing systems with you, as well as your goals in moving forward, and make suggestions on their findings. And if you found today's webinar helpful, we'd like to encourage you to attend future webinars and view our client testimonial videos on the Dynamics GP solution. So thanks for taking the time to join us today. As a reminder, please submit any question you may have through the GoToWebinar panel's questions box. We also have our contact information listed if you think you have any further questions after the presentation. Since it looks like there's no questions right now, we'll go ahead and stay on the line for a couple more minutes to take more questions. Thank you.